23 to 8 RSN Breakfast with Michael, Christian and Mick McGuane. And our very special guest in the studio for the next half an hour is the coach of the Melbourne Tigers, Chris Anstey. Welcome, Chris.
No, thanks. Great to be in here. Nice and early.
Great to have you here, mates. Mick, you asked off air, I hope you don't mind me revealing this to our listeners. You said, what's Chris? He'd have to be 6'5", wouldn't he?
Yeah, exactly.
And you almost fell over when he walked in.
7 foot. I wouldn't mind raving him in me day. Incredible. I think you get a, what's the word, Chris? A confused look when you look at someone in their flesh as opposed to listening to them on interview in telly. We all look the same size on television.
And I was going to say, it's always the same on TV. You watch your footy players every Friday night. You watch them on a Saturday afternoon. They fill up the screen. Now, you can't make a bigger screen for bigger people. You're watching people on the same screen. So basketball tends to be the same thing. The real small little guys, and we always used to hear Shane Hill. Look how little Shane is. He's 6'3". Yeah. So he's a key position forward.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Your season's been a really interesting one. You started off poorly, if I can.
Yeah, absolutely, we did. Yeah,
but you've put together some fantastic basketball through the middle phases, and just with the end in sight, just got to get things back on track over the next 5 weeks to ensure you play.
And I think I said to anyone who'd listened early on in the season that I didn't think we were that far away, but what we were doing wasn't instinctive yet. It was a new coaching group, it was a new team, it was a new owner. The ownership didn't affect it much at all, but it was just it was a period of a bunch of new people being thrown together, and it took a little while to gel. When we did, yeah, you're right, we played some really good basketball, won 8 out of 10 and got back to 10 and 10, and lost to the Perth Wildcats 2 times, lost an opportunity last weekend to beat Wollongong, and they got us. So, yeah, you're right, we've got 5 games left. We need to win 3 to make finals. We may slide in the back door if we win 2 of 5, but we don't want to depend on that. So, really important couple of games against the top team in New Zealand coming up, and it'd be a wonderful achievement for the group to make finals in their first year together.
Chris, I'm always interested to talk about those that never thought they'd coach but end up coaching.
That was me.
Yeah, that was you. In terms of your philosophy, your Norton 4 at the start of the year, did you start to doubt how your team should play?
Not really. I really enjoy, and I think you learn more about a person when things are going badly. It's really easy to look good, to be the best teammate in the world if you're 4-0, 6-0, and you're winning. And sometimes winning actually just wallpapers over or masks some of the things you're doing poorly. So everything we were doing poorly was certainly highlighted, and the way we responded to losing was highlighted. And I think we found out the good in a lot of people when things were tough. And for that reason, I was wrapped for them when we started winning games of basketball, because we figured out who we wanted to go through those battles with, and I think a lot of those players have stood up.
Looking back on it now, when you were Norton 4, what was the biggest glaring observation that the team had to do better?
Just be organised. Play instinctively and stop thinking. I think as an athlete, sometimes we think too much and it paralyses us. I think what you do during the week and the reason you train with the systems you put in is so it does become in some way, shape or form instinctive when you play. And we certainly weren't that. We were thinking too much. We were trying to figure out what we needed to do instead of just being professional athletes and playing basketball and trusting our instinct.
Can I just go back on that point while I've got an opportunity? When Mick mentioned you weren't, as a player, a career coach, when did that change for you? When did that moment come where you thought, well, maybe coaching is for me?
It was late in my playing career, and probably because I spent most of my last year injured. But even before that, and the guy I used to tell this story is a guy who's our captain at the moment. Tommy Greer was a rookie when I came back and played for the Melbourne Tigers, and he's a wonderful kid, and he's now a grown man, but he's a guy I love coaching. And as I wound down my career, I found myself getting as much enjoyment out of his success and his improvement as I did my own. And we always want to win for your teammates, and while he was one of them, and he was the sort of kid that you'd sit over a dinner table, he'd ask you questions and you'd tell him stories, or he'd ask you how you learned particular skill sets and you'd tell him, and he was a sponge. And I really enjoyed that side of it. And you go home, you sit back and you say, look, I've had some amazing coaches, and I've had some really, really ordinary ones as well. And I think by the time you put together what you've learnt, you realise you've got a pretty sound philosophy. I went and started coaching at state level. I coached junior basketball. I really enjoyed it. And I think that the 2 years after I finished playing, it was exactly that. It taught me that I did want to coach, and I did enjoy coaching, but whether I'm a career coach or not, I don't know. I'll get fired one day and we'll move on.
It happened all very quickly for you, didn't it, to get to the elite level of coaching?
Yeah, it really did, and it came absolutely out of the blue. And the club approached me and asked me a couple of questions about what I thought about what was going on at the moment. And my problem is sometimes I'm too honest, and I told them it was impossible for me to have an opinion because I don't see the training every single day, and it's not fair to judge just by what happens on the court. And we started, just chatting about what a professional club or what a club might look like moving forward, and they obviously enjoyed what I had to say. I got called back in for an interview 2 days later, went through an interview process over the next week and got the job. So it was very humbling, I think even more so than getting selected as a player to be given the responsibility to guide a club, and it's something I don't take lightly. It's something I know that if I do poorly, I won't do it for long. And the hours spent as a coach with the sport are so much greater than what they are as a player. That I suppose it's one of the big adaptations that I'm coming to grips with.
Chris, a couple of years ago, we were fortunate enough over summer to have Homicide Williams come into that same very chair you're sitting in right now. Unbelievable interview, riveting.
Yeah, he's great.
Different person, but also from me, when I listened to him talk, to me it was all about him. To me it was all about what he had to do, not what the team could embrace. Have you found that in your first year that it's been complex to actually get all the individuals that you're coaching on the same page?
For a start with Homicide, he's a wonderful personality, and he's someone that we spoke to in the off-season, and a few different factors that we didn't quite, he was on a short list. We thought about bringing him back. It just didn't fit. But I think with any team, you can't carry too many players who are more worried about themselves. And I often think you can carry one, and sometimes you need that. You need a player who's got the guts to step up and be a little bit selfish for the betterment of the team. But once you start getting 2 or 3, you just can't get away with it. So we certainly want to make sure that we don't have that. Everything we do, we encourage team, and if that starts to rear its head, it's not going to stick around for very long.
Call it fair or unfair. Is that more the American way? You look at the NBA, you look at a lot of imports that come over here to our competition, and I reckon there's some finger pointing from afar that is generally the case.
I don't think it's the American way. I think it's a way. I mean, if I went overseas and my job was on the line every week, you've got to prove your ability in the way you best see fit, and oftentimes it's an insecurity that athletes think that has to be represented in statistics. I'm a big believer that individual success comes after group success. So if I'm recruiting a player, first thing I look at, has he won a championship? Has he been on a winning team? Can he win? Can he help us win a championship? And I don't want to see 25 points a game in a team that finishes on the bottom of the ladder. I want to see 12 points a game, 9 assists in a team that makes the semi-finals.
So in your first year, based on what you know now with the group you've got, obviously if you don't finish out the year that well, changes are inevitable. How do you go through the profiling of the next generation of star that you might import?
Yeah, look, we'll spend a lot more time on that. And first of all, the last thing you ever want to do is flip a team and make it a rotating door. So we want to, stability in sport's huge, and we want to make sure we give everyone who's here the opportunity to stay. And I've said to the players that they make my job really, really easy when I walk into the owners. If we make finals or we make a championship series or whatever it is, and I walk into the owner's office and say I want the same team back, it's an easy argument. Now, if we finish 5th or 6th and I walk into his door and say I want the same team back, he looks at me like I'm stupid. So, no, we've got a psychologist on board. He does profiling. He works for one of the AFL footy clubs. There'll be a process we go through with regards to on-court ability, to salary requested, and if that all fits in, then we'll check out their profile. We'll see, just to get an idea of what we might expect. And it's not going to be rock solid. It's not going to be an absolute, but it gives us a pretty clear picture.
Chris, stick with us. We'll get a quick break out of the way and come back with more with Tigers coach Chris Anstey in just a moment. It's 14 to 8.
This is